Hello and welcome to the Cottage at Woodland Corners. Today we're making chili. So I had an interesting story that came up with regard to chili, and I'll just be honest with you. When I first was trying to think about how I wanted to address the topic of chili, I really didn't have much to say. I'm very middle of the road with chili. I like it. I don't love it. It's fun because it comes in so many different varieties, and some people like the heat, and some people like it without the heat. I personally like heat, but a lot of times when I'm cooking, the people that I'm cooking for don't like heat. So I have to kind of forgo the heat for myself during the cooking process. So if you're into hot chili or you're looking for a really hot chili recipe, the one today is probably not the one you're going to go for. All I could say is if you want to use this recipe, you still can. Just use a more spicy palette when you're doing your spicing and when you're seasoning the chili. And that way you can sort of use this same recipe if you like the recipe and just heat it up more, or use jalapenos in there. I personally don't put any peppers in this particular recipe. I would normally put in a bell pepper if I had them. So I have no aversion to putting in peppers, and I encourage it, and use hotter peppers if that's what you like. I would normally put like a bell pepper because, as I said, I'm cooking for people that are not really into heat as much as I am. So I love all that spicy stuff. But for chili, I thought, what am I really going to say here? Because the only thing really different that I do with this particular recipe is that I started off almost like a stew, because I will start it with celery, with onions and carrots. And that is not something people always do. Sometimes you do get chili with carrots in it, but onions are a staple for sure. But that sort of grouping of the celery, onions, and carrot is generally something you see more with a stew, but I do start with that when I'm doing a chili. Mainly, chili is just going to be tomatoes and beef and onions, and then you put the right spice palette in it, and you have a basic chili at that point. So you can put whatever you want to dress it up with. And so that's just kind of how I start my chili, but some folks start it differently, and that's fine. Leave out, put in whatever it is that you like. Also, in this particular recipe, I do use beans and I do add corn. So just a heads up on that. And yes, I saw the episode of Big Bang Theory where Sheldon talks about how it's not really chili if you're putting beans in it. And I don't care. I call it chili. It has beans in it. I don't think people make that distinction. If you do, then what did he say? Something like, this is good, whatever it is. I think it's chili. I call it chili. Call it what you like. I do use black beans and I do use sweet corn because I love that sweet pop of the corn kernel. To me, that's one of the things corn brings to the table. It's a very starchy thing to eat. And when it's not sweet, I'm not sure that it delivers for me exactly what I want. So for me, when I have those vegetables that bring in that kind of sweet pop, like I'm going to call, I'm calling them vegetables because people tend to think of them that way, but they may not be technically vegetables. Tomatoes and corn, they have a sweetness to them that I think is something I look for. They can bring that to the table. They don't always bring that to the table, but I like that being brought to the table. So for me, I bring in the sweet corn. I like the sweet carrots. And when I bought the black beans, one thing I thought about was I didn't used to actually be good with canned beans. There was something about canned vegetables that kind of bothered me. I have gotten over that since, because I've actually eaten at enough people's homes where I've had them use canned beans and it was fine. I don't know why it was so meaningful for me to buy dried beans that I would have to soak and then cook forever. And it's funny because I just did another recipe on gizzards where I'm saying you have to cook those for hours, and for some reason that's fine with me, but I guess you can't buy canned gizzards. So canned beans are fine. They're a quick way to get beans into a recipe when you don't feel like boiling something for 2 hours or, soaking overnight. So the canned beans are fine. I use canned black beans. A lot of people use pinto beans. But the story that came up this week, which was really interesting because I had not recorded the intro to the chili recipe, and I thought, am I going to really have enough to talk about? Someone I know has recently had a medical issue where they are not really up for cooking and their family needs food. And one of our coworkers put together something called the Meal Train, which I had never heard of. It's a website where you can schedule people to bring meals to someone's home if they need help with cooking or, things like that. So I signed up and I wasn't sure what I wanted to bring, but our offices are dispersed throughout the country. And we had an option to donate to a GoFundMe or to do this cooking chore for them. And I like to cook. And the other thing was that I happened to be one of the people that was local. So I really thought the thing I have that a lot of people don't have here is proximity to the person and their family. So I really should sign up to cook something as opposed to donating money, because in this case, cooking is something I am situated to do because I can bring the meal to their home, whereas a lot of people that are not in the state here with us can't do that. So I thought I'd take advantage of that and do my part. When I looked at the stipulations at the Meal Train website, one of the things I saw was that they had a very strict keto diet. And I don't really cook for that. I kind of know what it is, a bit, that it's the high protein, low carb diet, but I really wasn't sure about cooking a recipe for that. And when I started Googling to see what the options were, one of the things I saw was keto friendly chili. And it was basically the same exact chili recipe, just skip the beans, skip the corn. So I made a giant pot of this with just the beef, bell peppers, and tomatoes and onions. And then I took that and put some aside for another family that I was doing some cooking for. And I added the beans and corn to theirs. So I was able to sort of start this recipe as a keto-friendly recipe for the family that just needed the keto, and then sort of have that recipe off and add some more ingredients for the other family. And so I ended up with 2 big pots of chili that were slightly different, but still useful for both of those family situations. So it's cool that the recipe was that versatile, and I feel good that I was able to finally find a recipe that I could use. I will be showing some images of those. You'll see the keto-friendly one will not have the corn and the beans in it, so it's a little less colorful, but chili's not really known for being colorful. It's a very brown dish. So the other recipe, I'll show that one too with the corn and the beans, and you'll see how, it has a little bit more color pop to it. Like I say, it's a very versatile recipe. There's not any one chili recipe. People have their own and they are very, very proud of them. I'm not super proud of my chili recipe. I make a decent chili. One thing I will say is that I do buy the chili spice pack if you want to jazz up your palate and use something else, spice it yourself, or use the spice pack as a starting point and then add other things, you can. So don't be intimidated by seasoning. I'm not going to be going through seasoning. You're going to see me dump the seasoning mix into the chili pot. That's what I'm using. I usually double that. So instead of just using 1 for a pot of chili, I'll use 2 because I like it to be really flavorful. But other than that, that's all I'm using is a standard chili seasoning mix. And with that, let's get cooking. That's it for this week's episode. Thank you so much for joining me. If you appreciate the content at this channel, I invite you to like and subscribe. I would love to see you back here next week. Thanks so much for watching.